Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics and Right. I'm Egberto, Willies, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. We are going to have a great show for you today. Look, it's tough what's going on right now. We are so concentrated on this assassination, the murder of Charlie Kirk. And, to some extent, look, we don't endorse that at all. We must say that. What we're going to start the show with when I am done introducing, bring the way we normally start the program, is play a condensed version, really cleaned up version of what I did this morning, because I want to get this point across. And after a few days in this week, or maybe even, soon, we need to get off. We need to not allow the right wing to keep pumping up this narrative on Charlie Kirk, because what they want to do is they want to keep their right flank inflamed, lying about who's actually effected this. Let's be very clear. The person that effected this murder grew up in a very conservative home. And I tell you what I want to do beforehand. I want to do something beforehand, but let me introduce our folks. Remember, we lost the first few dozen of people on Substack, but I want to welcome Judith M. Dalen. Welcome aboard. Karen Andrews. Welcome aboard. Margaret Ryan. Welcome aboard. She said, "This is where critical thinkers go to get facts." Thank you, my dear, beautiful Margaret Ryan. We also have Barbara Fetante, from Austin, Texas. Love me some Barbara. We go back a long time with the DSA, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Carlin Garman, welcome aboard. They want to make Charlie a martyr. Yes, they want to. We won't let them. We also have Maya Taylor in the house. On the other chats, we've got bringing up the beginning was Michael Rudden from Brooklyn, New York. Patrick Magner from Houston, Texas. Hey, Patrick, thank you for being here, my dear brother. We also have in the house, Yvette Avery Herod from Atlanta, Georgia. Yvette, love having you here. Of course, as usual, Yvette is one of our heroes, or a very long time hero. All right, let me just get started with some of the stuff Michael has, but I do want to get into the program rather quickly. Forbes, 8-month Canadian boycott of U.S. travel going strong. A Canadian boycott of U.S. travel continued through August, anchoring an enormous economic loss for American tourism this year as visitors from around the world choose not to travel to the United States amid President Trump's aggressive tariff rhetoric. The number of Canadian trips to the U.S. that has dropped significantly in 2025, with air travel down 25%. That's huge. That's the profit margin right there. And road travel down by 35%. That is beyond the profit margin right there. The prolonged decline may be permanent and is a result of heightened political tensions and economic pressure. When you have a stooge for a president, this is the kind of stuff that happens. Michael Randall said the independent Irish grandmother and green card holder held by ICE over $25 check. Donna Hughes, an Irish grandmother and green card holder who has lived in the U.S. for 47 years, was arrested by ICE over a bad check for $25 from a decade ago and is facing deportation. That's a shame. She has long been detained. All right. Newsweek. Voters say Trump has hurt the economy more than helped. Of course, Trump has continually blamed Biden for the bad economy, while the economy of the first months of the new presidency usually results from the previous president. And it was very good for Trump then. Now it is cratering. And Newsweek, Republicans get bad news on inflation. The people have figured out that tariffs and fascism are bad for the economy. Now will they also figure out that the very accusation is a confession? Inflation spiked in the first month of Biden's presidency and had lowered throughout Biden's first term, not to zero, but to a manageable number. Egberto, what you got here? Mondays are hella busy. Took me a few minutes to post my usual startup. Well, I love your posts. Dan McCurry, thank you for being here. Welcome aboard. Bruce Pollard says, hanging out here as usual. Thank you for being here, brother Bruce. Lee Grant, how you doing, brother Grant? Great to have you here. You're going to learn a lot today, brother Grant. E2247, as usual, will ensure that we don't forget the genocide in Israel. The genocide in Israel that we are all complicit in as a country. At some time, we will have to atone. Egberto, you stopped reading at the worst point. Pardon, which one did I stop reading at the worst point? Inflation spiked, or let's see what else. I don't want to leave you hanging. Let's see. While the economy of the first months of the presidency usually results from the previous president, it is valid only if the new president doesn't create bad economic policies such as tariffs, mass deportations, and domestic troop deployment. I think I cleaned it up right there, Brother Rudnin. Thank you. You do good work all the time. All the time. Thank you. Let's see. Eric Hayes is in the house. Bruce Pollard said, got my purple shirt on. There you go, Bruce. Bruce has his shirt from Net Roots Nation. All right, brother. Okay, let's get busy. Diane, welcome aboard. Melissa Harris, welcome aboard. MC, join. Tina, look, let me see if I can find it. I think I saved it off. Talking about, there's a person who brought, I found on TikTok that, let me just tell you guys, I am not into the gaming method, the gaming stuff. So this is one thing, however, that I took at face value. We have Michael Rudnin in the house. I am sure Michael Rudnin will qualify and validate this, and to make sure that it isn't some sort of misinformation here at all. So I am about to get this started, and I want to hear some. I think I saved it off. Bear with me, guys. I think I saved it off. I want to make sure I saved it off in the right place. Okay, I think this is it. And I'm coming on with it now. And I am going to want some validation on this, Mr. Rudnin. You, as a gamer, you are. Here we go. Oh, come on.
White nationalist. What's that? Well, let me show you some of their... He wasn't an immigrant, he wasn't a person of color, he wasn't anything else besides a white nationalist and a groiper. What's that? Well, let me show you some of their insanity. White man, fight back! A groiper is what happens when these people realize that this movement was a lie. So rather than leaving one cult, they join another, led by this man who famously said,
"It's your body, my choice."
And somebody who also had major beef with Charlie Kirk.
Charlie Kirk never had a kind word to say about me in his life.
Groipers can be identified almost solely by these memes, this complexion, and these Penske rental vans. These are the people that I have dedicated this channel to combating. I make so many videos trying to remind people the horrors that this man created and why history cannot be allowed to repeat. This is not directly a groiper meme.
Okay. I am going to tell you something today.
That is what I wanted to show. That is not the one that I wanted to show, but as it turns out, it is actually one that was worth showing. This one here from is actually one that I probably will show tomorrow here, because what it turns out is when I tell you that those people who are on have an American passport but born elsewhere in trouble, this is what I'm talking about. But anyhow, let me get to the program proper, what I want you to listen to, and then we'll continue with the program after this piece that I did this morning, cleaned up quite a bit. Over the weekend, I've written several articles on the issue here, but I want to go over it in detail. And let me just tell the audience and also tell people in broadcasts, people writing articles, if you are not with a corporation, if you are independent media, you're an independent journalist, if you are an independent writer that's not dependent on some corporation that is fearful of telling truth, it is imperative, and I mean this, it is imperative that you continue to go out there and push the truth unabashedly. Because what we are having right now in this country, in many ways, there are two stories I'm going to be covering. One could potentially have a direct impact on me as a naturalized American citizen, but more important to that is one that can have a material effect on absolutely every single woman, every single person of color, every single LGBTQ person, every single person that doesn't fit. Let's continue. I wrote an article titled, "We Must Not Yield to the Charlie Kirk Saintly Myth or Else," with a subtitle, "If we allow the right, along with the complicity of the mainstream media, to deify Charlie Kirk, given the hate he promoted, we are marginalizing more than half the country with a manufactured hero." The right and the mainstream media is acquiescent to what the right is putting out there, wants you solely to concentrate on the evil that is murder. And murder is a bad thing. Murder is something that should never be done. And assassination is something that should never be done. None of us should have to constantly buttress our argument by making that statement. That should be a statement that can be inferred without you having to state it. But as a radio show host who will more than likely everyone attempt to take out a context, I will buttress many of the discussions with letting that be known. Murder should never be sanctioned. I started this way. I said, sadly, I must start this post in this manner, but I must. The murder of Charlie Kirk was wrong, period. I do not know any progressive, any lefty who wanted him murdered. Moreover, given the experience the left has had with the media, it was not at all surprising that he would be made a manufactured hero. As the right and Utah Governor Spencer Cox attempt to blame left-wing radicalization for Tyler Robinson's murderous act, it is essential that not only the association with the left wing or progressive terms or ideologies to be equated with radicalization. The tenets the left stands for are things that improve people's lives. More on that later. The staunchest defenders of gun culture who extend Second Amendment rights are MAGA, the right, and conservative Republicans. In the long run, the policies that those who purport to be conservative vote for ultimately come back and harm their health, social, and financial well-being. The farmers are seeing this now as their farms start going into bankruptcy. Those who must purchase their health insurance in November are about to get the cost shock of their lives. Women whose lives are threatened by ectopic pregnancies and other gender-related ailments will be endangered. I could go on and on. All of my readings thus far point out that Tyler Robinson grew up in a very, very conservative household, that all, him included, supported Donald Trump. They were well integrated in the gun culture, as the various pictures on their family social media pages show clearly. He is a knowledgeable young man who apparently was a gamer. This guy is a very smart guy with a very high IQ. According to reports, his roommate, with whom he was in a romantic relationship, was transitioning. There is nothing progressive or left-wing about this young man. He was just a guy who grew up conservative, who snapped. Most Americans, except for a tiny number of ideological issues, want the same thing. Most Americans, you ask any American, they love their kids. I don't care if you're conservative, you're liberal, it doesn't matter. You love your family, you love your kids, you want what's best for your kids. All those things are standard. They're on the same page. As our country descended into conspiracy theories, lies about healthcare, taxes, social policies, and the resistance to science, as it embraced shallow thinking over critical thinking, I wondered what would happen when those adhering to those tenets pushed by the right woke up. In other words, when those people that's been fooled for all this time wake up, what's going to be the result? When the farmers wake up, what is going to be the result? When women who are penalized by this system wake up, what's going to be the result? You know, that's my biggest fear. My biggest fear is these people waking up. In other words, para imputar a la gente, what happens when they become awake, when they're awakened? I have said that the day of reckoning is coming sooner or or later, because the ill effects of the broken ideology are upon us. And the problem is the awakened are well armed with an ideology stoked by the Second Amendment rights and some requisite actions those rights purport to give them. In other words, whereas, people get mad at progressives because we always want to talk things out. We always want to do the critical thinking stuff. The ideological right always look big bad guns, God, and it's like, let's go marching in and take things out if it doesn't go right. And my fear is, what happens when these people realize they've been had? That the thing that they once supported, the things that they really support, the thoughts that they had, all these things that Charlie Kirk talked about, the racial thing, the gender thing, the money thing, the immigrant thing, when they find out. Because remember, Donald Trump right now is acting on these lies, right? He's dumping immigrants and it's killing labor in many areas. He's throwing tariffs on, and the reality of a slower economy and the high rising prices and drugs and everything else is starting to hit them. I mean, all the things that they spoke about, when you build your home on sand, it eventually crumbles as that sand washes away under the basement and it caves in. What happens when people's entire life is based on lies and they find out that they had a devotion to which is ultimately harming them? It seems like from reports that Tyler Robinson's family considered him radicalized because he spoke the truth about the hate that Charlie Kirk represented. Imagine that. You are radicalized for being awoken. And a normal person, when they find out the truth, they say, oh, well, I guess I need to think differently. But what happens if that when you open your eyes because of your own personal experiences? I don't need to tell you what that personal experience is now for Tyler Robinson. I mean, that should be our fear. We should never, ever condone violence. But when you have people stoked with guns, when you have people talking about Second Amendment remedies, even the president made inferences to that. When you talk about how do we solve our problems, Second Amendment, how do we solve our problems? You throw in the army. How do we solve in the problems? Violence. And then you are accused of pushing violence when the whole tenet of your ideology is the fomenting, is the promotion of violence against the other, even as recent as a Fox News host suggesting lethality towards the homeless. So, yes, it seems like from reports that Tyler Robinson's family considered him radicalized because he happened to say a truth about Charlie Kirk, and that is he promoted a lot of hate. We do not know the dynamics of that family dialogue, but it is not hard to infer when a conservative breaks ranks with the cult. The right, MAGA, conservative, and the mainstream media continue to apply sainthood myth to Charlie Kirk. The hate and evils that he discussed on college campuses are discounted under the false equivalence of his encouraging civil dialogue of opposing ideas. That is false. That is patently false. Nobody would tolerate us having a rational discussion of whether the Holocaust implemented by Hitler is something that we should say 6 of one and half dozen of the other. Nobody would sit down and have a rational discussion and say, because you are discussing the good and bad of the Holocaust, nobody would look at that and say that is something that actually promotes civil discourse. It is false what they're trying to say. It is a disparity on every woman. It's an attack on every person of color. It's an attack on every LGBTQ person to say that the kind of messages fomented in those things that he did was anything other than hate. Like scientists using a benign virus as a transport to deliver a deadly payload to an offending pathogen, Kirk used his prove me wrong and others to transport hate, both subliminally and in your face. And we're going to go over a few of those in your face in a minute. Progressives, the left, stand up for all. Support education, social, financial, and health policies for all. We don't ask ideology. We don't ask those things when we say these are the policies we want. Let's not forget, even under FDR, when we had social programs come out, there were a whole bunch of people restricted from said social programs. But progressives don't do that. Progressives believe in support for all. They do not need to marginalize different identities as they understand the science of humanity, which makes it clear that given equal access to success generates similar outcomes irrespective of identity. That reality is in direct contrast to what Charlie Kirk promoted in terms of hate. Zettel's short post of just 17 quotes that define Kirk for over 50% of this country is just an overview. And let me go over those. On black people, happening all the time in urban America, prowling blacks go around for fun to go target white people. That's a fact. It's happening more and more. It's not a fact. It's a lie. Black and black crime is 90-something%, and so is white on white crime, about 89% or something like that. It is a lie that people target other races by race or just because of race. You know who target based on race? White supremacists. I don't know of a black supremacist movement going out specifically to kill other people up just because of their race. But you know who do that? White supremacists. That's a categorical lie that he goes on campuses and talks about. Black pilots. If I see a black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified. That immediately puts into the ethos of those college students that somehow black folk are under, or there's some special treatment is made as opposed to them doing the qualifying thing. Like I've told many of you, if you see a minority in these types of jobs, know that that person is likely overqualified, because to get there, they had to go over so many hoops. You know why you always see people of color excel and folks wonder, well, they are special. No, it's because they've had to work that much harder to overcome racism and prejudice. So if you have a black pilot, rest assured that is one of the best pilots piloting that plane. If you see a Latino pilot, same, because they had to go through more hoops than anybody else. So it is a complete opposite. It is projection what he did. Black women, they're coming out and they're saying, I am only here because of affirmative action. Yeah, we know you do not have the brain processing power to otherwise be taken seriously. You had to go steal a white person's slot to go to be taken seriously. This is what, when black folk, when people of color, when women, when LGBTQ people go and watch the deification of Charlie Kirk on TV, look, we should condemn the murder. But when you have to sit down as a person of color, when you have to sit down as a woman and listen to how great somebody was that thought that little, that promoted this sort of thinking about you, don't tell me you need to sit back, acquiesce, and just feel this such a great person. On civil rights, we made a huge mistake when we passed the Civil Rights Act in the mid-1960s. On the death penalty, the death penalty should be public, should be quick, should be televised. I think at a certain age, it's an initiation. At what age should you start to see public executions? On Democrats, the Democratic Party supports everything that God hates. No, the Democratic Party listens to Jesus quite well. The policies that the Democratic Party supports, believe it or not, no matter what you think, are actually the tenets that are in the Bible many of you profess to believe in. No immigrant is a foreigner. Feed your neighbor, clothe your neighbor if they need. That's a part of the good book. That's a part of the Bible. Empathy, he says. I can't stand the word empathy. Actually, I think empathy is made up new age term that does a lot of damage. In other words, to be empathetic is damaging. To care about your fellow man is damaging. To care about your fellow woman is damaging. According to this, on feminism, he says, reject feminism, submit to your husband. Taylor, you are not in charge. Submit to your husband. You are not in charge. On gay people, you might want to crack open that Bible of yours. In a lesser reference part of the same part of scripture is Leviticus 18, is that thou shalt lay with another man, shall be stoned to death. Just saying, there's a lot of parts of Leviticus that talk about being stoned to death. A lot of it happens to do with what cis males do. Just saying. So, Miss Rachel, your quote, Leviticus 19, the chapter before, affirms God perfects law when it comes to sexual matters. That's what he's saying about Rachel Maddow. On George Floyd, he says this guy was a scumbag. Now, here is this. The mainstream media wants you to know how bad it is that he was murdered, and it was bad. But at the same time, this guy says George Floyd deserved what he got. And this is how we should be attacked anytime we attempt to tell the truth. I'm not done yet. Great replacement theory. It's not a great replacement theory. It's a great replacement reality. Just this year, 3.6 million foreigners will invade America. 10 to 15 million will enter by the end of Joe Biden's term. Each will probably have 3 to 5 kids on average, while native-born Americans have 1.5 a couple. You are being replaced by design. No, there's no design there. People have free will to decide if they want to have kids. There are some who don't like kids. There are some, but you know what? There's one thing about an immigrant culture. It's not about breeding kid. It's about loving families. Remember that. On guns, this is the big one. On guns, it's worth to have a cost, or rather, it's worth to have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year so that we can have the Second Amendment. And I have a video that I published on this one as well. On Jews, he said, Jewish donors have been the number one funding mechanism of radical open border, neoliberal, quasi-Marxist policies, cultural institutions, and nonprofits. This is a beast created by secular Jews, and now it's coming for Jews. And they're like, what on earth happened? And it's not just the colleges, it's the nonprofits, it's the movies, it's Hollywood, it's all of it. How comes the mainstream media haven't spoken about the anti-Semitism there? How comes on Martin Luther King? MLK was awful. He's not a good person. He said one good thing he actually didn't believe. On Muslims, they aren't even hiding their intentions. Muslims plan to conquer Europe by demographic replacement. Will Europe wake up in time? On Palestine, I don't think the place exists. Transgender people, you are an abomination to God. In finishing my article, I said, we should never sanction anyone being killed, ever. We also should not defy someone undeservedly. This man has a legacy of hate and lies that every woman, person of color, and LGBTQ plus person will never forget or forgive him for. For anyone to sit back and allow the deification of Charlie Kirk without pushing back on every platform where it is occurring, without speaking out, would make the fallacy of the legacy they are attempting to create a reality. And that is how countries fall. That is how one gets into fascism, by turning a fantasy into reality. By turning a fantasy into reality. And that's what we're talking about here. Now, I tell you what, a statement that Lee Grant made is very important. And I want everybody to listen to this in detail. Lee Grant, a conservative in our chat, and to put it bluntly, a MAGA in our chat, He said the following: the Charlie Kirk thing is a world phenomenon. This is huge. Underestimate / spin at your peril. He's right. Lee Grant is absolutely right. In Great Britain, we have Farad and all the right wingers. They found something to center around: the assassination of a racist, the assassination of somebody who represent everything white nationalists represent. That's their hero. Now, here is the only pushback, and this is why I am so forceful in this program that I'm talking about here. There are more of us than there are white nationalists around the world. But they are loud and they smell blood. What that means is they feel that they have something they can hold on to, latch on to as a symbol. And everybody else are just living their lives. Now, the fact of the matter is they want to make this look like a battle between the right and the left. This ain't no battle between the right and the left. This is a battle within MAGA and the right. This is a battle between MAGA and the right. They need to, what they're hoping is that if the left comes in and there's somehow a real battle, that would force these right-wing factions to reunite, because they reunite in concert. So don't be fooled. Why is it that I'm saying we must be on every platform and we must speak up? We can't be quiet. We can't stop protesting. We can't stop doing any of this, because the fight is not within us. We are out there fighting for everybody, MAGA, everybody. The policies we support, the farmers are going to say, yay, help us. Remember that. These yahoos that are out there are the privileged ones. All the privileged ones, they don't need money. They don't need cash. They don't need support from they're not supporting the farmers. They're into this deportation thing. They're into this racial stuff. But the people that are trying to feed their kids, they don't have the time for all this stuff. That is who we need to go to hell and recruit now. The farmers are ample ground. I went to a Democratic CEC meeting yesterday, and I was speaking to another very important blogger here in town. And I said, the Democratic Party right now is upsetting, because the doors are open right now for us to take back all that was taken from us with lies, because the lies are coming to fruition. But if we stop thinking about bread and butter issues and we start thinking about what Charlie Kirk and these guys want to support, hey, the reason you're in trouble is that black people are taking your job, women are taking your job, the Jews are doing this. The chaos that creates allow them to continue doing things. People won't forget that they're hungry. They'll just blame you for their hunger. People won't forget that they ain't got money to buy clothes for their kids. They'll just think it is you who are causing that. And to get over the hump, they think they have to destroy you. We have to be proactive now. We have to be in rural areas telling those, when those hospitals close, hey, doctors and hey, Democratic politicians from that area, you got to go in front of that hospital and say, courtesy of MAGA. When your kids can't get their lunch at school, courtesy of MAGA. In 4 weeks, when you start going on to the exchange, or maybe 5 weeks, when you're starting to go on to the exchange to get your insurance, and it is 75% higher, and you can't afford that anymore, brought to you via courtesy of MAGA. We have to be ready. And in all of that meeting that I went to at the CEC, I heard none of this. I heard, yeah, we're going to go knocking on doors. Yeah, knocking on doors and telling them what? Knock in on doors and telling them what? We ought to be in front of not only the doors, we need to be in front of the schools, we need to be in front of all these other places. The people in Kingwood, our great heroes, these women in Kingwood are doing great. They're on the street every Thursday. They skipped Thursday because of the Charlie Kirk thing. Look, they're putting their bodies out there. And they didn't do it because they were concerned. I wasn't too happy about that because it meant that terrorism worked, right? Terrorism is the ability to change what people's behaviors are going to be. If the violence that you've effected causes the political behavior of people to change, that's terrorism. And what we did is made terrorism successful by not going out there. People say, well, they're scared that they're going to get shot. I could get shot tomorrow. They firebombed my house once before. We have to not let them see they cannot feel like there is any fear in us. They react when they think you are weak. That's when they act. If they know that you are going to fight fire with fire, I guarantee you, they'll start scaling back. And that is where we have to be. All this redistricting stuff, Democrats in every Democratic state need to say, oh, so Indiana, you want to go redistrict to get a 9-0 advantage? Great. Where are you, Maryland? Let's go 5-0. Where are you, California? Change it. Make it all 0. Folks, this is a different game. This is about maintaining democracy. And all of you that are listening to my voice need to reflect this on to everybody else. Now, Lee Grant's statement is just a warning, not a successful warning, but where they are at. We have to make sure that that movement that they have, which is a movement, but a movement of the privileged, judged by that's being followed by a few of the sycophants that are able to muster a little bit of cash to help them out. We have to be prepared for that. Okay, I'm going to scroll all the way down in the chat and then go up because I lost a bunch. Let's see what I got to read out of here. I'm not going to let's see. Trump and most elected officials still support Israel despite the ongoing genocide. Yes. Despite the siege warfare. Yes. And that is our doing. These folks aren't white nationalists. If you're supporting Trump in an organization, you're implicitly a white nationalist organization. We're not going to argue about that. If you support the KKK, you are the KKK. All right. Let's continue. Gene Daigle says cult of personality movements see people like Charlie Kirk as an idol, and so their dear leader was assassinated and going to use it to inflame and rile up their rabid dog base. Just listen to CK's wife first public comment. I know I heard her. I don't want to disparage her, so I'm not going to make a comment on her. But there's one thing I will say that she said. His movement will continue. Let's pause. That's what she said. Remember what that means. The anti-womanism, the sexism, the misogynist, the hate, the racism, the anti-trans, the anti-LGBTQ, the homophobia, that will continue as part of that movement. That's what that means. We need to be very much aware of that and act accordingly. There's a video that I saw on TikTok that is beer that I wonder, I said, like, I wish these people could understand math. And everybody go follow this woman here, okay? Please follow this woman. I'm going to play her video, but remember to give her a follow. Very important. She has some great information on her TikTok. fact-based. Check this out.
We're fucked. And so many of y'all are very misguided, aiming your rage at me for explaining the extent to which we are fucked by using math. Math does not give a shit who you voted for. Math does not give a shit about your feelings. And just for you, Richard, I wrote some more shit on the whiteboard, so let's get into it. If you look at 100% of the income that is earned by people in the United States, 66% of that income was earned by the bottom 90% of Americans in 1975. Fast forward 50 years, and that share has dropped to 45%. The incomes of the top 1% of Americans have increased significantly, over 326%, while the incomes for the middle 60% have only gone up 73%. When corporations receive massive tax cuts like they did in 2017, they put those savings into salaries and bonuses for their executives. They do not put those savings into wages for workers. All of these numbers are presented in 2022 dollars for an easy comparison. New car, buying a home, and a 4-year degree from a public college or university. From 72 to 2022, those costs have doubled or more than doubled, but most incomes have not doubled. Add to that the cost of healthcare, food, utilities, etc., and it makes sense why many of us have the feeling like our money doesn't go as far as it used to, and that feeling is reflected here in the numbers. It's clear that many of y'all are vehemently defending this policy because you are irrationally obsessed with Donald Trump, and you think that going after people like me is going to make him love you more. But I think others of you are defending this policy because you are still clinging to the hope that you could actually be part of the 1% one day. But the reality is you won't be. I won't be. And it's not because we don't work hard. It's not because we're not deserving. It's because the deck is stacked against us, and it becomes more and more stacked against us with each subsequent administration that passes tax policies like this. But if you keep thinking that hard work is the only thing that separates you between this and this, then you will keep working harder and you will keep making rich people richer. And those rich folks thank you for your hard work, and they thank you for your defense of these kind of tax policies that they know damn well will benefit them and not you. We're fucked.
Absolutely. So, I mean, the thing that you hope is that as we are showing them what's happening with this good old bill, that they at least learn a bit of economics as well. The numbers don't lie. Of course, they don't particularly like numbers as many of us would see. But the difference here is this: they may not like the numbers, but they can feel the numbers. Anyway, folks, the number to call in, we are at 46 right now, so we have time to take some calls. The number is 281-823-7747. Again, that number is 281-823-7747. Maybe I should put it in the chat. 281-823-7747. Let's go. Patrick Magner, come on in, my brother. How you doing, sir?
Doing fine, thank you. Good show so far. She brought up the rich, and you and I like to talk about billionaires a lot and multimillionaires, and that they've got too much influence. Something I think that is really missing from recent events, and let me make this as clear as possible, because I understand something happened doesn't mean I condone it. Right. And that's something that a lot of people are trying to push on people, because I understand something doesn't mean that I condone it. With that said, 10 to 15 years ago, nobody really cared or noticed much about the trans community. And it wasn't until a few billionaires that had personal grievances because of people that transitioned in their family, or because of things that they experienced, that nobody cared. And it was after Elon Musk and a couple other billionaires that had grievances with this community,
own kids,
pushed it on everybody else. Yeah, they manufactured anger and hate for these people, and then pushed it on the general population and sold it to us. And I I would argue that if it wasn't for Musk and some other people, that Charlie Kirk would be alive right now, and that a young 22-year-old man would be in a relationship with somebody and learning and figuring out life. But because we push this narrative of hate and anger, people are dying and people are getting hurt.
You know, and the sad thing about it, Patrick, is then at the same time, they start their projection, and that projection saying, oh, look at what the left is doing. The left is not out there killing. That's not what the left does. And, you know, it's sad because I was just watching MSNBC. Katie Tur had the same terrorist specialist on, and that terrorism specialist repeated the same lie. And I immediately tweeted her again with the document that I wrote to say, no, if you in the aggregate, right-wing terrorism has been with this country from its inception, and it's from guys exactly like you talk about, Patrick.
Yeah, I mean, the influence of billionaires are killing us now, and I just wanted to bring that up. I mean, I don't think that this would have happened if it wasn't for the influence of billionaires.
You're absolutely right. So you're absolutely right. Anything else, my brother?
No, sir. Great program. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, folks. The call is. Let's see what. Let me check that video out first before I jump on it to see if I can do it, Redden. Okay, yeah, I don't think they'll ding me for that one. So I think I can do that. If I get ding, I'm coming for you. If I get ding, I'm coming for. How do I get this out? Bear with me as I pull it over. Where is it? It's right here. All right, let's see if I can start it over. All right, let's see if I can start it over. Okay, Michael, I'll try it, okay? Let's see what happens. Para ver. All right. Where is it? All right. All right,
Malcolm X.
The leftist students in Utah who didn't want Charlie Kirk to speak did what leftists do. They signed petitions, they organized, and they lined up to challenge him. The right-winger that didn't want Charlie to speak did what right-wingers do and took him out. We are not the same. The leftist
Oh, wow. That is exactly, isn't that what I just said when we were talking to Patrick? That, and I tell you what, and not for a pat on the back, but the article that I wrote, what is it called? Rubio's fat, which one? We must not yield. There's a sentence in there I said, the right mag conservative and the mainstream, but in effect, what I'm saying is my biggest fear is when look, they have a culture, a gun culture. They have a culture of violence. And my biggest fear is what happened, and that's what I'm looking for in the article. My biggest fear with these guys is what happens when they find out that they've been had. And that's the issue. What happens when they find out that they've been had? In the article I put here, I wonder, let me put it here. I wonder what would happen when those adhering to those tenets pushed by the right woke up. I have said that the day of reckoning is coming or later, and the ill effect of the broken ideology are upon us. And the problem is the awakened are well armed with an ideology stoked by Second Amendment rights and some requisite actions those rights purportedly gives them. Think about that. They are armed, and when they don't agree with something, they're coming down the aisle with those guns. All right, have you ever seen or heard a racist bigot admit to being one? They usually just accuse you of playing the race card and will try to come at you as a racist. That is from Maywood. Maywood, well, from Long Beach, California. Welcome aboard. Paul Fleming says the Trump administration is redirecting nearly $500 million in federal funding toward historically black colleges and tribal colleges, a one-time investment covered primarily by cuts to other colleges serving large numbers of minority students. The Education Department announced this funding boost days after cutting $350 million from other grants, mostly from programs reserved for colleges that have large numbers of Hispanic students. You see what's happening, right? It's called purchasing. Purchasing. All right. Let's see what else. There we go. Paul, Mike Cisak is out there putting misinformation again. Just doesn't like what reality says. Okay, so E227 says South Korean government inquest certified the names of 163 dead or missing and 55 wounded, and added that many other victims. Where is this coming from? Any other victims' names were not reported. The No Gun or Peace Foundation estimates 200 were killed, mostly women. What is that all about? Okay. I don't know. I guess I got that in midstream, so forgive me about that one. All right. By the way, guys, the phones are still open. We still have about 4 minutes. That is 281-823-7747. 281-823-7747. Paul Fleming says, Brian Kilmeade compared the NFL's Charlie Kirk tributes to the 2016 saga of former quarterback Colin Kaepernick taking a knee before games in an high race. Oh, Lord. Let's see. Governor Cox keeps digging the hole bigger because he refuses to admit he's a racist, homophobe, and an outright bigot. What a shame for him to keep that narrative going. He's still talking about left-wing ideologies. Yep. Okay, folks, look, we're not going to tolerate that, okay? Do not allow it to stand when anybody attempts to say that this violence has been coming from the left. It has not. This is completely right-driven violence. No more, no less. No more, no less. And we should keep that in mind. All right, folks, if I don't get any more calls, I think we'll cut this baby a little early for today. Hold on another 1 minute. 281-823-7747. 281-823-7747. Give me a call. If there's something you'd like to add, give me a call if there's something you would like to add. Otherwise, we will shut her down in about 40 seconds. 281-823-7747. Una vez más, 281-823-7747. All right, let's see. Ray Brackens, you're calling on the wrong line, Ray. You're calling on the wrong line. That's not the one connected to the computer. Anyway, so, that's what happens when some folks have your actual number, right? They just see the name and they click on it and say, oh, let me call that name. And they don't put that it's the right number for the computer, which is a different number altogether. Welcome, Michael and Federico Francia. Welcome aboard as well. Linda, Trina Blomquist. You can go ahead and call on the regular line. You got about a minute, Mr. Brackens. Give me a call on the other line. I'll wait before I shut the show down for about 30 seconds to see if you make the call to the right number. 10, 9, 8. There you go. Mr. Brackens.
All right, I got you on the right line. Sorry, my phone auto-corrected it. But anyway, yeah, I want to thank you for another good show. I appreciate that young lady speaking it like it is. I need to go back and podcast again. And I actually had an idea. There's 2 podcasts that I want to do, and I'll run this past you before you close out. But I saw this guy who actually say he's a lawyer. He does a lot of podcasting here on YouTube, and he said he actually has defended against the election fraud claims of Trump. He had a lot of information about how they're planning to steal the next election. I think that's important information, about 30 minutes worth. And then there's another video I saw, which is just a dry presentation of the United States Constitution that I want to deconstruct. What do you think?
I think it's great. I think it's wonderful. I mean, I think I like programs that actually do that with the Constitution because, the right wing seem to have they like to believe they have an attachment to the letter of the law of the Constitution. For some people in this country, trying to adapt to the letter of the law of the Constitution is a clear and present danger for themselves. So I would love to see you deconstruct that. That would be good.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that advice. And like I say, we need to reverse this wealth inequality. The young lady said we're fogged. I love how she said that. But if we don't, we're all going to be fogged for a very, very long time. And it comes down to the wealth gap. So we got to fix it. Yeah. But thank you again, Egberto. I know you about to
Thank you, brother. You have a wonderful day. Anyway, folks, please support the program however you can. How can you do that? You can support the program by becoming paid subscribers of our Egberto Off the Record newsletter. That's my Substack newsletter. It's called Egberto Off the Record. And how do you do that? You can go to politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. And I'm putting the link in the chat right now. politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. Please consider subscribing. That is how we are able to do what we're doing. And it's not just this program that you see here that I do here. I also do a program on KPFT 90.1 FM, 6 o'clock every weekday morning, 6 o'clock every weekday morning, Central Time. Also convert a lot of my essays into, or rather, I convert a lot of my videos into essays that I also put around the info space to make sure that we stay informed. I also make sure to create TikToks, Instagrams, Telegrams, Shorts, etc. We have to play we have to be on all platforms because they have paid stooges on every platform. And if we are not there to counter that, trying to save this democracy is impossible. And I'm not just saying that for the sake of saying it. It's hard work that we have to stay engaged. And what everybody's doing, what Cindy's doing out here in Kingwood, what Neil is doing out there in Houston, what others are doing there in Georgia, what others are doing wherever you are. Everybody's playing their part. So I'm asking you, if you have the wherewithal, give us that coffee. It's go to politicsdoneright.com/newsletter, politicsdoneright.com/newsletter, and please consider becoming a paid subscriber. We work on a very slim budget here. All the design, all the videos, everything, it's done right here. So it's done on a good budget. So folks, I want to thank you for being here. Love you all. You can write me directly at info@politicsdoneright.com, info@politicsdoneright.com. You can subscribe again, politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. Love you all. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right. And you guys know how I end this baby. I am what? Out.
All of our country's problems, from polarization to ignorance on domestic and international issues to a complete misunderstanding of our economic and healthcare systems, are a direct result of a derelict mainstream media that too often bend over backwards to support corporate or bought politicians' wants as opposed to the people's needs for real information to make their lives better. Independent media is the only solution to inform truthfully and factually. Why? Because our loyalties are to you, the ones who fund us with small dollar contributions and subscriptions. Please consider supporting our independent media platforms by subscribing to our Egberto Off the Record newsletter at politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. Again, that is politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. It's an investment that pays incalculable dividends.